I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. So I'm here today at Quixmala for an amazing interview with Dr. Jerry Rivera, about which I'm extremely excited because we're going to be talking about this device here and here, one device with many components called the Rasha. And this came on my radar in the last few months as things do that I feel I'm supposed to learn about, and I've been seeking them out. They're somewhat rare in the United States because they are that special. And when I got here to Quixmala, I realized not only did Jerry bring the Rasha here, but it's going to stay here and live here at this fantastic location in Mexico. So as if this place couldn't get any cooler, they took it to the next level with probably the most advanced consciousness healing device on the planet. And I know that because I tried it yesterday and again today. And outside of very profound spiritual experiences that have happened naturally or with a little assistance from the plant kingdom, this was the most profound experience I've had. I mean, it is truly an amazing journey, and my curiosity was already present. Now it's peaked. I'm absolutely fascinated about how Jerry came up with this technology, what it does, and how he's using it to help heal humanity and raise the consciousness of the people on the planet. So we're going to have a in-depth conversation now at lovely Quixmala in Mexico. Enjoy the show. Jerry, here we are, dude.
How you doing, Luke?
I'm doing great, man. I just did a Rasha session, so it doesn't get much better than that.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling amazing. My first session, for those listening, for you guys listening that don't know what the hell the Rasha is, you're going to find out. But just personally, I'll let you know my experience, yesterday, and we'll go into it more further in the conversation, but it was absolutely profound, beautiful, amazing, set the tone for what was a completely magical night.
I bet.
And today, as a result of yesterday being so awesome, I was so smoked. I barely got any sleep.
Really?
I was, eating food late, and then there was a storm, and the shutters were blowing on the bungalow, and so that was woke me up. So I was like, how am I going to do this interview? So luckily we had the Rasha here, and I'm just immediately mood elevation, energy level, brain function, totally tapped in. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
That's incredible. And I'm so glad that, prior to our interview, I got to experience the technology.
Well, I think it was important, right?
Yeah.
For you to experience it, you and Allison, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you were able to experience it prior to the festivities.
Me too. Because it's if, every once in a while I'll just find something interesting at a trade show or online, and I'll track down the inventor or representative, and maybe worst case scenario, have to do a Zoom interview and kind of learn about it secondhand. But the experiential knowledge of something is so much more potent.
Correct.
So that's what the show is all about, is having experiences and sharing those experiences and helping inspire people to go have them themselves. So I want to start off just by asking you, what is the most exciting thing in your life right at this moment, personally, professionally, or anyway?
Just fulfilling really my core objective. I don't know if you knew, 20 years ago, I had a massive heart attack, near death, if you want to call it, experience. And since that day, it's just been, that was 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago, September 10th of 2000. It's been a journey of learning, experiencing new things for the first time, right? So it's been a journey of really learning and experiencing for the last 20 years. So that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah. So it's a continuation of that awakening.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you had the premonition, because that was going to be my next question, was about that near-death experience. And having listened to a few of your interviews, we share a sordid, checkered past in the world of drugs and alcohol and all of that. And one of the things that I found most compelling about your story, and correct me if I got this wrong in any way, but you had the heart attack, had this near-death experience, and you were on tons of drugs at the time. And when they revived you and did your blood work,
no drugs showed up in your system. Is that correct?
Correct.
Like
Twice.
what?
Yeah.
Twice?
Yeah, they did because they thought there was an error.
Oh.
But that night, that 24-hour bender of heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, barbiturates, and alcohol.
Wow, nice mix. Kudos.
I really didn't want to be here. That actually originated, I think, in 1974, when at 9 years old, I was sexually molested by, let's say, a male teacher at an all-boys private school in Plainfield, New Jersey. For most of that year, several boys and I were sexually abused, and I didn't know how to deal with it, Luke, for my whole entire adult life. My relationships were shit. Couldn't trust anyone, right? I could not open myself to anyone because last time I did that, someone in authority that I trusted violated me.
Yeah.
So for I'd say up to it was 35, I was an expert in every single addiction that you want to know about. Not only addiction, I was a expert in possession because I was possessed, completely run by another entity. So I know addictions, I know possessions very well, biological possessions. And on that day of September 10th, I decided, 23 hours prior to that, I was like, I'm done. I'm finished. My whole life up to that point was based on orgies, gambling addictions, food addictions, drug addictions, every single addiction possibly that you can imagine, I engaged with. Until that one day, it was on the Upper East Side in New York City, on the rooftop of my friend's best friend at the time, his girlfriend. She had a brownstone, and we were on the roof. I did my last line of cocaine like this, and I sat back like this on the chair, my head tilted back like this, and my consciousness popped out of, you can call it the crown chakra, I call it the fontanelle area, whoop, 45 degrees, about 3 feet above my head. And that, when you come out of the body, you're still conscious. And that was very freeing in itself. But the moment I internally asked that question, well, if I have 360-degree awareness and that's my body, that's literally starting to turn blue and purple because my face was like this and I saw the whole thing. The moment I asked, who am I? I literally was uploaded, if you will, to what I call the unified field. You can call it God, you can call it all that is, whatever your label is. I did see my images of my lifetime flash like this, but in like slow motion, like this. But then once I asked that question, who am I? I was uploaded to what I call the unified field of God or source. And in that, I didn't want to come back. It was the most amazing, what I call love frequency or resonant harmonic frequency. Love is a co-resonancy of frequency. And I felt that immensely. Didn't want to come back. I felt I was freed. But in that, let's just say, unification of non-space, you know everything, because consciousness or energy is information, as you, I'm sure, well aware of. I came back, I wouldn't say kicking and screaming, but I was reminded of what my contract was, and I came back with a zip file of information. A massive, let's say, what's that cloud thing that we Dropbox? Okay. So it was a massive Dropbox that literally took, I would say, 12 years to not just download, but to make sense of all of this information. And an example or a technology that was birthed out of that information was the Rasha technology.
Wow.
Yeah.
One thing I've always wondered about out-of-body or near-death experience is there languaging? Like, are you having realizations in English still? You know what I mean? Because you're multidimensional being, so language is irrelevant, right? So is it just a felt sense of knowing without the
Bingo.
The construct of linguistics.
Correct. It's what I call direct cognition or direct experiential knowing. So there's no language. I didn't hear any audible. It was that experiential knowing. And that's what it was. That's the language, really. When your individuated consciousness that is you, let's say, uploads back to you at those higher levels, it is all experiential knowledge or direct cognition.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've probably only had that type of experience in a suspended animation way, which, of course, in that space, time doesn't exist because it's a nonlinear locale. But the first 2 times I took ayahuasca, I did my best to dismiss any kind of expectations about what it was going to be like. And I really I think if I did anything, my intention was just to surrender and trust the process, because I'd been sober. We have so much in common. It's crazy. We'll go into it, but I've been sober at that point for 22 years. Like 12-step programs, rehab, like sober, textbook sober.
Yeah.
And I go take that ayahuasca, and it was so interesting because I think I knew myself and could trust myself enough at that point to know that this wasn't just some escapism or was going to lead me back into the life that you just described of hell, living hell. Anyone that's lived through that kind of addictive pattern knows that it's only a party for a short period of time.
Sure.
And I knew that wasn't going to be the case, but I had no idea what I was to expect because my prior experience with psychedelics had not been done consciously. It was just, I was just trying to escape and numb myself, right?
Get it.
But I remember when that medicine hit, and it was like thought, cognition, language, all of that was suspended. And there was just this stillness and this connectivity and receptivity to source. And the witness that was witnessing that phenomenon didn't even have language. You know what I mean? Completely. And every once in a while, my personality would peek in and go like, this is weird. We're not thinking, Right. It's like, I was expecting maybe to kind of get down like, Luke, here's what you need to do with your life,
right?
Which came later. There, the following nights of that particular trip, there was a lot of very direct, regressions into experiences in life and healing of trauma that I was able to perceive, and somewhat direct, right? But those first 2 nights, it was so interesting because what you described is, I defined it as the ultimate sobriety. I had this recognition that in that moment, it was the most sober moment I'd ever had in this lifetime.
Right.
Because of the brief suspension of the personality self, the ego, the intellect, the emotions, all of that was just like swept away into just conscious awareness,
right?
Which is as sober as you can get. Because, you could be sober as a judge in your waking beta state out, doing this personality thing in the world, having an identity as male, female, whatever race, blah, 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 right? But you're still kind of under the spell and the hypnosis of the earth plane, the material plane. So in a sense, not truly sober, because you're still under the hypnosis of being alive in a body.
Yep.
So just incredible experience. And it reminds me of that. I mean, I don't think it was you can't really compare, but it's the closest thing I can get. But I want to go back to another thing that you mentioned, and that was, and thank you for your vulnerability and authenticity about the abuse that you experienced. And over the years of being saved from that life of addiction, for which I'm just every moment so grateful for, I've worked with so many recovering alcoholics and addicts and stuff, and I won't say that it's universal, but it's exceedingly common that they've suffered sexual abuse, emotional trauma, physical trauma, etc. I mean, almost everyone has experienced that to, various degrees. And the way that you explained of having no way to hold that experience and process it, know what to do with it, except just to kind of,
I wanted to get the hell out.
Right.
I didn't feel comfortable in body. It was always an escapism, right?
Yeah.
So that was my way of dealing with it for a major chunk of my adult life.
Yeah. When you had the heart attack and you're taken to the ER and you come back, did you have to work on the addiction issues after that? Did they resurface and did you go back and dabble? And then
Great question. So the consciousness that's speaking to you here today is not the consciousness that was running the show prior to September 10th of 2000. It is an aspect, this talking to you is an aspect of that consciousness. So it was like a walk in, walk out, same consciousness, family, not another being that came in. However, my son at the time was 5. He said, "You're not my dad." He knew immediately that I wasn't the same consciousness that experienced that sexual trauma at 9. However, that sexual trauma still is in the cell, in the memory of the cell. So I feel it, I felt it. And when it came to the ER and no toxins, no drug toxins in my blood or urine, what happened was higher oscillating energy, if you call it, will always transmute denser, let's say, consciousness or denser frequency. It's just the law of quantum physics. Higher oscillating energy expansion will always transmute denser, higher energy holding frequency. So my postulation and theory is that is what happened to the toxins. Now, what was I doing? How was I acting? I was looking at everything for the first time because it happened in New York City. So I'm looking, as I left the ER, I'm looking at the tall buildings as if I landed for the first time. So to get back to whether I had to go through any type of, was there aggression with drugs? Absolutely not, because the consciousness that is speaking to you did not actually directly experience those addictions, that sexual trauma. So it took a really huge shock in one's life for that to happen, for me to not even go back to drugs. But no, I haven't.
Wow. And did you follow up with any therapy or any kind of, mental health treatments or 12-step programs or any of that stuff?
What I did was I delved into searching and researching pretty much a lot of the esoteric traditions, knowledge, religions. For example, esoteric Gnosticism, esoteric Kabbalah. I delved into shamanism with the Four Winds Society, things like that. I delved into medical Qigong for cancer, traditional Chinese medicine, anything that had to do with healing the body or bodies of knowledge that taught that, I delved into.
Got it. And when did you do your study and your PhD? Was that prior to that experience?
No, that was after. So from 2000,
I guess it might be hard to get a PhD if you're smoking crack and doing it.
Yeah. No, when you're like,
I couldn't even finish high school.
Right. When your whole modus operandi is, drugs, sex, alcohol, you're not going to get much work done. Right. Yeah. So
unless you isolate it to crystal meth, maybe. But you could end up taking a lot of radios apart and not putting them back together.
And clean and having a hell of a clean house.
A sterile toilet.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So from 2000 to say 2006, I was studying esoteric knowledge and et cetera, et cetera. From 2006 to 2012 or 2011, I actually became part of let's say a private quantum morphogenetic physics group, similar to, but more advanced than the California Physics Group. Have you heard of them?
No, I'm not familiar.
The California Physics Group was a group that was led by A.R. Borden, I believe, or H.R. Borden, who's no longer, he transitioned, but that was a group that delved with multidimensional physics, using techniques to consciously leave your body, like the SRI program that the Stanford University and the CIA had in the 60s for remote viewing. So this group from 2006 to 2012, let's just say, it was like a group of 200 people that literally did debriefings on quantum physics, spirituality, DNA template activations, proper perpetual life Merkaba techniques, things of that nature. And that's what I delved in. After I left there, or the group was taken down, meaning literally disbanded. I mean, people were taken out. The group no longer exists, just like the California Physics Group does not longer exist because of the sensitive nature of the intel they were sharing with people. From 2012 to, I'd say, 2012 to 2014, I went and got my master's and PhD at Quantum University in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
And are you still studying? I thought I saw
I am.
something. You are?
Yeah. I'm a nerd.
Yeah. You're a perpetual learner.
Yeah, because when someone says they know everything, Luke, as you know, I mean, someone that pretends or says, "Oh, I know everything," or
yeah,
they really don't. They're just parrots, just parroting information they were taught. So I wanted to get into genetics and genomics because I know from my experience in the near-death, there was something that was held in what the scientists erroneously call junk DNA. I relabeled it as potential DNA, or the introns in science. So I just said, well, you know what? Let me see if I can get into Stanford's online program. And I wrote an essay. I had to say why I felt like I should be in the program, the genetics and genomics program. And so my essay delved with ET and human hybridization. And is this possible? And what are your thoughts on this?
And they accepted it?
Yeah, they accepted it.
Wow.
So I'm currently in their online program.
That's wild. That's quite progressive. I would think they'd be like, oh, too weird.
No.
That's cool.
No, but Stanford's even saying something happened 200,000 years ago to the mitochondrial DNA that mysteriously switched on the DNA. They even said that. So,
interesting.
So it's interesting how Stanford, a higher educational university, is literally confirming what people like Zacharias Sitchin was talking about.
I forgot about him, dude. I used to read his stuff.
Since 1976, about something happened to the DNA, the human DNA.
Right.
Right. Dr. Lana Cantrell talked about that in her book. Something happened to the human. This is not the name of the book, but it had to do with her 8-year research on human civilization and how they fell from a higher civilization in terms of consciousness, technology, civilization. Crazy.
Wow.
So Stanford, you are teaching this because I know, is actually sharing some of this information.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
There's so much disclosure type activity percolating now, or perhaps it always has, and I'm just becoming aware of it. But really, really interesting. I watched a documentary. I believe it's Stephen Greer. I think it's called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. And I've never been someone who's super into ET phenomenon and stuff.
Understood.
Just kind of on the periphery, like cool if I come across something I find compelling, but I've never felt like it's going to have really any impact on my life unless I'm visited by one and they're like, hey,
sure,
let's chat.
Right.
But that was really interesting because the way he framed it was, and the fifth type of encounter was that, and he goes through, obviously first through fifth, and his framework is the fifth is that we've been misled to think of other forms of intelligence interdimensionally or from other locales, that they are the enemy. And just like we've been, you live in this country or that country, and then the other country is the enemy, that kind of paradigm, right? The military-industrial complex position of hoarding resources and enslaving humanoids. And so his theory is that the vast majority of those entities or other life forms that we would call ETs or aliens are benevolent. And his hypothesis to prove that is that due to the advanced nature of their technology and the fact that they can shapeshift, time warp, pop in and out, they're in a completely different realm of energetics and hundreds of thousands of years more advanced technologically, that if they were not benevolent, that they could just go, humans gone in like a second. You know what I mean? So the fact that they've, kind of hovered around military installments and things like that, and, there's been some interaction, but that our government or governments of the world have framed them as an outer threat, and so his whole thing is that they're, universally speaking, that there are no aliens, right? There's just life in existence.
Sure.
Consciousness manifest in whatever form or dimension it happens to manifest in. And it was really interesting because I realized in that moment that through Hollywood and comic books and, everything, I thought, wow, there's all this predictive programming about the alien invasion and that it's automatically assumed that they're here to harm us. Right. And so I think for that reason, people give less credence to that realm because it's scary to even think about. Like, you don't want to see a UFO. You don't want to be abducted. All of our accounts in the media have been framed as something potentially dangerous or even deadly, right? So since seeing that film, it's kind of opened me up a bit to that. Like, oh, this is really, really interesting. And of course, the video footage is extremely compelling. And I mean, just, you can't refute it. It's not CGI. And it's just, he and his groups of trainees are going out into the desert in New Mexico and summoning visitations, and they show up, and it's just it's getting really cool right now because I think it's not just really fringe kooky people, from Taos or Sedona that are seeing aliens. It's like regular people are like, hey, maybe they're friendly and they can actually help us to evolve. So I don't know. That's not a question. It's just a statement or a revelation that I've experienced.
I completely resonate with that. And just like, the human race, you have some people that want to serve humanity, and there are people that have service to self. And just like in all races or in all nationalities, you have good and you have, let's just say, not so good in terms of, you have selfishness and you have, harmony and, peace, right? Same way with extraterrestrial biological entities. Why are they different? There's good people, beings that want to help humanity, and there are beings, maybe they're more self-serving in nature, just like humans. So it's the same.
Yeah. When you had the experience that you had, this awakening, and then were, freed from those former addictions and things like that, in your exploration of consciousness and research, when you got into the shamanic path or anywhere else on that road, did you delve into, the conscious use of plant medicine ceremonially, or clinical psychedelics, like any of that world?
Absolutely.
What have been some of the key takeaways from that exploration?
So I didn't actually physically experience those plant journeys and medicines, or let's say DMT. I didn't do that because everything pales in comparison when you really are on the doorstep of, I call it the transfer of consciousness experience. I don't like using near death anymore because that has a negative connotation. But,
right, and on a more macro level, there is no death. I noticed you said that person transition. I was like, oh, that's really cool because you can't kill energy.
Correct.
Energy's not alive in that sense that it has a beginning and an end.
Right. It's just all there is. Right. So. All I know is this: all of those forms of journeys, plant medicine, experiences, all have their purpose. Just make sure that you protect your fields when you go on any type of journey, whether it's synthetic, plant-based, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just protect your body and your energy fields so that, let's say, other entities can come in and we call it timeshares or hijacking.
That's funny. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I remember yesterday when I was about to take my maiden voyage on the Rasha, you invited Allison and I. So you guys don't have to do it, but I would invite you just if you feel called to, I forget the word, but to me, it's like I call it kind of putting up my force field.
There you go.
It's that.
Yeah.
It's just inviting God and wholeness and oneness and love into whatever experience I'm going into. Not out of a place of fear or concern, but just solidifying my intention and that I'm aligned for the highest good for all universally. And so anything that's not with that, let's just keep it out and allow it to do its thing in the periphery away from my
perfect. Intention,
Yeah.
I told Allison and you,
Yeah.
protection and experience. That's
Right.
it. So,
Right. There's so many different directions I want to go. So, Jesus, I always feel like with a conversation with someone like you, where there's a lot of alignment, it's just like, how am I going to not make this 5 hours? Okay.
Yeah.
God, I'm like stumped. It's hilarious. So, where do I want to go with this? I want to get into the Rasha technology, and I guess a good way to get into that might just be expressing my limited but profound experience so far.
Sure.
So, having been someone who's meditated for a long, long time, practiced Kundalini yoga on a daily basis for years, done a lot of breath work, sound healings. I mean, I've definitely had some pretty profound spiritual experiences and awakenings just on the natch without any plant medicines or anything like that. And then in the past almost 2 years, I've had quite a few life-changing experiences where when they were over, my life was not the same. And there's so many examples of that, one of which being my lovely Allison. The way that we came together was partly facilitated through peyote ceremony. Which sounds so crazy to say that for someone who hasn't had the experience. Like, okay, you guys are going to break up in a week, but it just was. It's just, I don't know. You get in the quantum field, and like and have stated, there's multiple ways to get into the quantum and work on things in there. And so I think I've explored every known way of doing that. And I would say the most profound experiences I've had have definitely been with assistance from some kind of plant medicine, or just the energetics of the shaman or the healers present. But in my experience with the Rasha yesterday, I go into any experience like this very open-minded and open-hearted if I trust the energetics of the inventor, of the representative, of the guide. It's like, if that feels right, and I'm pretty good about tuning into that, then I just completely surrender. And I don't insert my will into the experience. It's just like, okay, let's go. Take me where you want to take me. And I find I get the best results with that. So yesterday, when I laid down on the sound table that you've got, which you can explain in a moment, I did that. I just went, okay, here we go. Have your way with me. I trust. And it was so trippy because within a couple minutes, I was taken to this town called Sebastopol, California. It's in Sonoma County. And that's where I lived from probably 7 to 12. And there were some really beautiful times there, and there were some very challenging times as a kid. I experienced abuse while living in that town, of the nature that you described, as well as other times. But I say if I had a childhood, that's probably the place where I had it, because there were riding my BMX bikes and catching snakes and running around the apple orchards and eating apples and playing in the creeks, and I was just like a country ass kid. So there was a lot of amazing times there. But what happened was, for quite a while, I guess in non-time space, I was just transported to all of these different memories and specifically locations. So it's like I was traveling up this dirt road where I used to ride my bike, and then I would turn left and go into this house, and that's the first time I ever saw Atari. And then and then it was over here and stealing Playboys from my friend's dad's little trailer in the backyard. And then it was smoking weed for the first time, listening to Dark Side of the Moon, and it just kept going. And I was cognizant of the experience to the point where I thought, this is really interesting. Why are we staying in this town? I've had 49 years of life. That was just a snippet of the life. But whatever was guiding me wanted me to really explore and kind of clear that whole town. And it just went on and on in that little town. The place where I used to buy my candy bars at the grocery store, and just when I got my bike stolen in front of Safeway, and just all these random memories. And there was really no point to it that I was aware of. I'm still not aware of the point. Much like many plant medicine ceremonies where you're just taken on some journey. Like, what the hell was that? Okay, I'll have it. And so that was very interesting and very much akin to the depth of a plant medicine ceremony, where you're just taken in this time travel kind of capacity. And then after that, it just went complete void. Just no awareness of anything. I'm just gone. Almost like a 5-MeO thing, but just less visuals and bells and whistles, not that much of a smack to the head,
Right.
But in the sense of that just oblivion and just nothingness, which is really my favorite place to be, honestly.
Right.
There's just nothing.
Just chilling.
Is the best kind of chill that you can get. And then, and then went through some other things with the body. There was some activations of the chakras that I was very aware of. It was interesting because I don't know how many transducers, or is there one transducer in your bed? This
Several.
one here? There's what?
I think there's several.
Oh, there's several.
Yeah.
Okay. So the bed that I'm speaking of, Jerry can describe in a moment, guys, but you're laying on this bed. It kind of looks like a massage table-ish. Those of you who are watching this video, you will have seen the intro where we do a demo of it. So I'd encourage you guys to watch the video. But as I put my attention, the whole bed is kind of vibrating like a subwoofer, basically, and you're hearing these tones just to give the experience to the listener. And so I started just then I was using my will a little bit and so I'm feeling this universally throughout my whole body, head to toe. I wonder what would happen if I just, in a light way, not forceful way, just put my energy in my different chakras. And then when I did that, then all the energy in the rest of the bed essentially disappeared. And it was just like, and there was this kind of like vacuum motion. It was like, like vacuuming out in a pulsed rhythm of each chakra. And then at will, I could just go, let me try the throat. And then I just move my awareness, not even any kind of exertion, but just move my awareness to the throat, and it would just be all the energy focusing on that one. I thought, this is so bizarre because it really seemed subjectively like the sound waves in the bed were moving according to my mind's direction.
Correct.
So it was just a really incredible experience, and then my girlfriend Allison, I'll have her share her experience sometime. But she was totally tripping. I mean, she's a shaman. She's much more sensitive to the subtle energetics than I am, and has clairvoyance and all this kind of stuff. And she was over there just laughing and just tripping out when she was on the bed, man. And then her experience was really wild. She had all kinds of visitations and was just traversing the universe and, riding on comets and shit.
Right.
So it's just, to say the least, I said all that to say that I'm thoroughly impressed with what you've done here. And I want to know more about it. So I guess we could start with the influences like Nikola Tesla, Robert Becker, any ones that I'm even unaware of, Royal Rife, people that have been involved in energetic medicine, devices, inventions. How did their various teachings kind of lead you to create this, what seems to be an amalgam of a lot of different philosophies and technologies?
Correct. So all the information I was, let's say, extrapolating in the dream state, in the sleep state. So that's where everything was put together, so to speak. So when I wake up, I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like, I would get configurations. I would get certain mathematics, which we're not privy to on this planet. So I just started putting everything together. But during the process of actually the whole blueprinting process, I actually went to a dear friend of mine who's no longer with us, who was the late brother of Robert Slovak, Jack Slovak. Jack was a physicist. He was top secret defense contractor for NSA, CIA, NASA, all of those intelligence agencies. So I went to him, and Jack put it this way, he would advise one of the world's leading experts on scalar energy, Colonel Tom Bearden. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No, I've not.
Colonel Tom Bearden is known as the scalar energy expert because he delved with the military aspects and applications of scalar weaponry or scalar energy, right? So Jack would actually advise him. So I came to Jack one day and said, hey, Jack, do you think this would work? Do you really think the intention was, could I replicate my transfer of consciousness experience with the transmutation of the toxins? Could I do that with the information that I came back with? So I said, hey, Jack, do you think if I applied scalar energy, which he knew was used for mind control, weather manipulation, etc., earthquakes, tectonic changes,
Can I interject just one quick question
Sure.
before I forget?
Sure.
Does the HARP system use scalar? I'm speaking of this crazy ass government installation in Alaska.
1,000%.
Oh, okay.
1,000%.
You guys watch, there's a documentary and a book called Angels Don't Play That Harp, HAARP. I'm sure there's other reports on it, but it was kind of a thing in these circles for a while. People were really into it.
Isn't that Nick Begich?
Yeah.
That's his book, yeah?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just curious. Okay, carry on.
Completely, HARP is scalar energy.
Which can create, as you said, make earthquakes and
manipulate the weather.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, Jack, I feel that we can take scalar energy or technology and use it for benefiting humans. And in 2001, 2001, Colonel Tom Bearden actually said that. He said the only way humanity is ever going to avoid self-destructing itself is if humanity utilizes the technology that's being used to actually control them for healing. And I'll send you the quote. That's not verbatim, but in a synopsis, that was his quote. So Jack ran the numbers and he said, yeah, it's going to work. So he was the initial go ahead green light for me. So then when we started putting everything together, so I have specific engineers do specific compartmentalized tasks. So I had my coil engineer that hand wound the coils to specific eternal life mathematics and ratios. I had my plasma, my gas plasma tube guy create the tube. Then I had my other engineer who's ex-NASA actually put it together and hand make it. So after it's all together, Luke, that's when I wasn't sure if it was going to work, man. It was like, okay, I got this information. I put this technology together. I had no idea it was going to work. So then what I did was I had to reverse engineer the research. I had to say, okay, who in history was suppressed? Whose technology was kept down and hidden from the public that actually helped the human physiology? Number one, Nikola Tesla, okay? And his work with scalar energy. Two was actually Antoine Priori, who was an electrical engineer living in France that actually created the Antoine Priori anti-cancer machine using plasma gases and high magnetism to reverse nearly 100% leukemia and end-stage cancer and leukemia in animals. When he went to human trials, the French medical government shut him down. Next was Dr. Royal Rife. His work was suppressed with resonant frequency, the killer of the C word. We won't go into that.
The forbidden word.
Yeah. And the late Dr. Bob Bearden with electromedicine. I can't forget Professor Dr. Konstantin Meil, who's a German physicist that literally proved through multiple published research experiments and papers that the introns or the potential DNA literally communicates via the magnetic vector of a scalar field.
Wow.
So
did the work of Robert O. Becker come into your awareness at all in this process?
Yes. And his work specifically with, it's not the immune system that heals the body, as per the late Dr. Rob Becker said. The immune system goes after the pathogens. It kills all of the fungi, all of the, the harmful invaders, if you will. But the immune system doesn't heal a damn thing. What heals the body is what Bob Becker said, the cellular regenerative system, which was a scalar or a longitudinal electromagnetic system in the body. That is what heals the cells, an energy field, if you will, or a system. So the guy was nominated for 2 Nobel Prizes and never won. So he was doing something right. So yeah, his work was his work in reverse engineering or proving that the Rasha could be viable was vital.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess going piece by piece, the magnetic field with the Tesla coil, is that, you said use a different mathematic formula.
So Imagine if Nikola Tesla was alive today, he would have created our coil. So if your viewers or your listeners aren't privy to the Tesla's coil, it was a flat, coil, flat, and it was an 1898, I believe, patent he had on it. And it produced, a scalar, it accessed the scalar field, but he accessed the electrical side of it. That's why Tesla was able to create wireless energy, free energy, utilizing the electrical portion of the scalar field and the Earth's natural energies. Okay. Now, if you want to communicate with the DNA, you need to veer towards or propagate towards the magnetic side of the scalar field. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So let's define scalar energy.
So there's an electric polarity and a magnetic polarity where the scalar waves are able to oscillate between?
There's the potential for both.
Oh, okay.
So pure scalar energy is actually omnipolar. It's a spherical standing particle that has the potential for electric or magnetic or light and sound. So that's where all the physicists and mathematicians get wrong, because they're really just trying to explain scalar with equations, with mathematical formulas, but they haven't experienced a goddamn thing. They haven't experienced what truly is our true nature. And our true nature, we are not physical beings, or let's just say energy beings having a physical experience. We are consciousness having a biochemical experience, okay? And consciousness, if you will, which really no one defines, well, let's define consciousness here on your show as pre-substance ether, which Tesla talked about. A lot of geniuses in the past talked about the ether, but they couldn't really define it. So, I just went off on a way tangent.
No, it's good. It's good. Keep going.
I'm
right there with you. I'm sure there's a few others as well.
Yeah. So, where were we? So the different magnetic
elements,
field, right? We're talking. That's what you said. So
because the way that I'm interpreting at least a part of this technology is that there are various frequencies within the software that are proprietary.
Yes,
they're being amplified through the magnetic field created by the coil.
Okay,
is that so far close?
So it is not a Tesla coil that we have used. It is an advancement of the Tesla coil. So an advancement, I mean, we are not using the phi ratio, the 1.618 ratio, to determine the coiling and the angles. We're actually using an eternal life ratio, which is 1.414, or the square root of 2, which is a base 12 mathematics in the coil itself. So
right, because you can see the coil in the glass tube, right? It's the part on both ends.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so, it looks nothing like a spiral type.
Well, it looks nothing like a Rodin coil either, because Marco Rodin uses, unfortunately, 369 vortex-based mathematics, which is a finite life. Because what the hell happened to the 12, Luke? Tesla didn't say the key to the universe is 369. Tesla originally said the key to the universe is 36912. That is the mathematical pattern. It's the 12 that everyone, we weren't taught in high school or college, we were kept from, because that 12 holds a very significant importance as the eternal life fractal code that actually emanated from first creation point. It was never meant to be base 9 or base 8 or base 10, rather, because we were taught base 10 mathematics in school. We have 5 digits here, 5 digits here, equaling 10. But why are there 12 months in a year? The ancient cultures knew about base 12 mathematics. The Sumerians, Mayans, Egyptians.
So for those that don't know what this base 12 thing is, especially me, that's just a different model of mathematics.
Yes.
It's not based on 1 through 10 and then 100 and 1,000 and 10,000, 100,000, on and on.
It is based on a numerical expansion. Okay, so let's just take the Fibonacci spiral sequence, which is a legitimate sound spiral numerical expansion that works in this Earth and this galaxy. But everything in this galaxy dies. Why? Because we're all finite life. At the end, at the center of the Milky Way, there's a black hole. And as per quantum physics and just regular physics, everything eventually is going down that black hole, Luke, but no one wants to talk about that. So does the Fibonacci spiral sequence and the phi ratio, do they all work? Golden mean? Absolutely. But we're in a finite life matrix. Everything dies eventually. So what if we had a numerical expansion, not based on addition, which the Fibonacci is, it's based on addition. So if you took 1 + 1 = 2, right? That is the Fibonacci sequence. But let's replace those numbers with, say, quanta of energy. What's really happening? This quanta of energy has to devour this one in order to birth this one. So it is a devouring expansion sequence. In order for it to birth other quanta of energy or numbers, it must devour the quanta of energy. Base 12 is based on ×2 or multiplication, exponentiation of energy. It's a numerical system based on there's no devouring of energy. 1 × 2 = 2. So 1, this sphere of energy, combines and there's an exponentiation of energy, multiplication versus addition. It's very simple. So that's pretty much base 12.
And there's indications that ancient peoples followed this model.
We're talking pre-diluvian. Let's go pre-flood. Let's not just talk about what the Egyptians are erroneously saying civilization started 4,000 years ago, which is a crock of shit. Let's just say, 200 to 250,000 years ago, there were human ancient civilizations that were far superior in consciousness and technology than us currently. They use base 12.
Wow. Shit, dude. All right. And then where do the various frequencies play in that the body is being saturated with? Are these the same or similar frequencies to Royal Rife?
Yeah.
For people that are familiar with the, like a Rife machine, you
Sure.
hold the noble gas tubes in your hand and choose the frequencies you want on a laptop and, shatter the cell wall of a parasite or whatever is going on there.
Right. So we do have Rife frequencies in the software as well as Hulda Clark. Okay. We do have those frequencies. But the difference between the Rasha and, say, a original Rife device is the pathway, is how it's transmitted. Where an original Rife beam unit it also had a plasma tube, but it was using radio waves. It was using Hertzian waves that, travel, transversely. So the longer it goes, the less powerful it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Robert was talking about that with us, right, the other day.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. The Rasha doesn't use a transverse wave. It uses actually a longitudinal or a scalar wave, if you will. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the Rasha doesn't create, here's another erroneous thing. You don't create scalar energy. You actually access it because the space between you and I is filled with those non-polar spherical particles that we call the source particle that's really scalar energy, right?
Is that particle, give me like a scale in terms of,
right.
An atom.
800 million source particles, which MIT erroneously calls it the God particle. No, it's the source particle, and it's 800 million of a source particle, which is the smallest unit of consciousness or energy, can fit in a proton, 1 proton.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are these particles existing in a quantum potential field, or are they existing?
You got it.
Okay.
It is the...
See, this is what gets the skeptics. I have like these EMF harmonizing devices that emit scalar waves, and I know they work because I know my body. I know when I'm sick from EMFs, and I put the thing in, and then I'm not.
Sure.
But there's the people that, and I'm not being critical or like I don't want to sound like a superiority complex, but there's people that are very hypnotized and brainwashed into scientism, the religion of scientism, and that if you can't see, smell, touch, hear, taste it, it's not real. It doesn't exist.
Understood.
And to me, I think because I've just, maybe it's because I dropped out of school and I never learned enough of that framework to get locked into it. To me, it's like, well, how do you summon a friend's phone call when you're thinking about them? Like, what? Where? Show me the evidence there. Show me the data.
Right.
And that's not to say that I don't support science, and I love to see data. I mean, if I take a supplement or something, like, I want to see some studies. I want to see what's in it. What does it do? Who's taking it? Give me some double blind shit. Cool. I'm all for it. But I know that on an energetic level, that the way I experience life is in a way that is not quantifiable according to Newtonian physics.
Right. And there's where the problem lies. It is not the physicists and scientists and mathematicians' fault because they were taught a foundation that is erroneous, including the current Western medical model, okay? Which both of my parents are medical doctors and they were practicing, but not anymore, okay? So current physics, science, mathematics, they're lacking the multidimensional aspect, okay? So it's not that they were wrong or they were just taught information that was lacking. So you saw that movie. You remember that movie Contact with Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember in that movie when they were the physicists, the scientists, and the mathematicians were trying to figure out the formula, but the moment they made it multidimensional, the formula, meaning they actually started to realize and apply that, oh, we don't just live in three-dimensional reality, it's a multiverse. Once you add that aspect, then you're starting to work with correct perpetual life mathematics and technologies. So asking a physicist or a mathematician, a doctor, if you will, that's taught the normal, university level education, asking someone like, say, them to understand what we're talking about, because it's all about science, replicating science. Science and spirituality should have always been an integration of both, right? But it was split. So asking them to understand what we're talking about is like asking a auto mechanic that you pull out of Joe's garage and you bring them over to NASA and say, hey, can you fix this space shuttle? The guy's going to be like, hell no. He has the foundation to fix a car, but a space shuttle or a space station, you're talking advanced knowledge. So that's what they lack.
Got it. Okay.
And no offense to my genetics and genomics professors at Stanford, please.
Yeah. Well, I try to approach these things in a non-judgmental way, and I'm sure your average physicist could run circles around me intellectually. I'm just coming at life from a point of view that I want to know the whole story. I think that's so many people that listen to this show are like, cool, there's pieces and it's not about right or wrong, or a value system of better, worse, smarter, dumber. It's just, what's the whole story? I think as a seeker of truth, I just have a thirst to understand the nature of reality.
That's why you and I resonate, right? Yeah. Because that's really, I mean, there are people, as you know, Luke, that don't want to know everything. They'd rather be like an ostrich, stick their head in the sand and just wish and hope for the best, which is fine. My brothers are that way. They couldn't give a shit about consciousness. They're just like, I'll just leave it up to the, whatever. And that's fine too. But I am like you. I want to know everything. I would rather know full disclosure than not know anything.
Yeah. I think that's kind of my prayer sometimes is like, I go, God, I want to know the nature of reality and consciousness, and I give you permission to blow my mind. You know what I mean?
I do that too.
No matter what comes at me, I'm willing to handle it. If I wake up in the morning and there's a gray alien at the foot of my bed, giving me orders, all right, I asked for it. I'm going like, show me everything there is to see. So what about the other aspect of the Rasha that is the proprietary blend of noble gases?
Yep.
Can you explain photons, noble gases, how those have an effect on biology?
So for the past 100 years, I'd say over 50 years, there are papers that you can go to PubMed or other online research websites that you can find the biological effects to a human organism of inert noble gases, and all beneficial, by the way. Okay. None of them are negative or, dangerous. Okay. So on the right side of the periodic table, you have the inert noble gases, right? Which everyone, meaning certain technologies today, use in their devices, right? They use the argon, neon, helium, xenon, et cetera, et cetera. So the proprietary aspect of the gases in our plasma tube, if you will, you can figure it out with scientists have this device where you shine through it. You can figure out what's in there, right? Which is not proprietary. What's proprietary is the PSI, the pounds per square inch, and the percent of the noble gases. And I don't use all the noble gases. I've added and removed certain noble gases.
Based on what?
Based
criteria?
On what really are the pure, I call it the noble. There are actually, it's called the nobility gases, okay? And these are certain, a set of gases that are geared to consciousness and a unique blend of them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what, and this is through my research and my downloads that I put this together.
And so when you're in a certain proximity
Mm-hmm.
to is it called a photonic field? Is that a way that you could say it? Or?
No, I would call it a magnetic scalar field.
Okay. And then the data carried by the noble gases or innate to these noble gases is transmitted to and through the body.
Yeah. So
via the vehicle of scalar and magnetic.
Correct. So there are 3 pathways that we transmit the information to the human body. First and foremost, it is the rasha. So the rasha consists of 2 scalar coils, if you will. Okay. The frequencies come through our software and literally travel the patterns of the scalar coil.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And remember, the angles and the ratios of our coils are eternal life base, 1.414 or square root of 2.
Okay, so rather than having I have an amplifier here and a speaker over there, and I just have a cord strewn about, or like our microphone cables, and the signal's being carried on that just in a random way, the signal from the frequencies from the software is going ding, bong, dong, ding, dong, dong,
travels
through that.
The actual configuration of the coils.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And then that process literally excites the gases in the tube.
Oh, wow.
Creating a scalar magnetic field.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Dope.
Or rather, that's incorrect. Accesses the scalar magnetic
which
field.
Is here abundantly anyway. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of accessing. Could you say that you're concentrating that potential energy into the body? Like if the scalar is here, then why do I need a device? I just sit here and I'm just bathed in scalar.
Well, fantastic point. Because do you really think that I wanted to create this technology and having, no, because I know we are the technology. So when we go into meditation, the goal is to actually calm our mind for our left and right hemispheres of our brain to hemisync. Once that process and that brain entrainment takes place, our brain, Luke, becomes the most powerful scalar energy accessor, if you will. Okay? So the rasha just helps us attain that much quicker.
So when you're thinking about someone in a different geographic location and you're, let's say intentionally praying for them, right? And then they think of you and they call you. Is the human brain acting as a transmitter and receiver like 2 radios or 2 cell phones in a different geographic location?
Yes.
And that data or that intention field is being carried via scalar waves
scalar
outside of the paradigm of time-space.
Yes.
Because it's in the quantum.
Yeah. And everyone wants to know, Luke, oh, really? Scalar energy? Give me proof. You know what an example is? Our thoughts. Our thoughts are literal examples of scalar energy. I mean, and here's the proof. Thoughts create the substance that God created, everyone says, oh yeah, God created the universe. Yeah, okay, true. But no one wants to know or even delve in how. What was the primordial substance that God used to create the universe? Luke, it was scalar energy. That is the primal substance of the cosmos that God utilized to create manifest creation, if you will. So our thoughts mimic that. So this being here with you was but a thought months ago, right? Oh, we're going to go down to Quixmala and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Here's today. We're in physical form. Our thoughts created this. Thoughts create our reality through scalar energy.
So in the hierarchy of manifestation, from the level of consciousness down to the macro heavy weight
material, physical, atomic.
Physical plane.
Yes.
What is pre-thought scalar, then thought, then where does emotion
beautiful
fit in?
I mean, that is probably the $1 billion question that your viewers and listeners should pay attention to this answer. So let's just say, and everyone can do this at home, and I invite you to do this. It's called the organic manifestation and materialization process. So we're literally going to mimic how Source or God created the universe. So if you close your eyes and just imagine whatever it is that you want to materialize. It could be anything. It could be a car, it could be a dog, a cat, more money, better relationship. So at the thymus area, at the base of the thymus, which is at the tip, upper part of your breastbone, I want you to put the actual feeling of that which you want to not just manifest, but materialize. So put the feeling of whatever it is that you want to create right at the base of your thymus. So you're going to take a deep inhale, and on the exhale, send that feeling to your coccyx, to your tailbone. At the coccyx, that is where the first 8 cells of your conception reside. Turn that feeling of that which you want to materialize into the emotion or the energy in motion of that which you want to materialize. Once you have the emotion of that which you want to materialize, turn that emotion by inhaling deeply. And on the exhale, send that emotion to the left side of your body, to the area of your spleen, which is just underneath your left rib cage. At the area of your spleen, turn that emotion of that which you want to materialize into the thought of that which you want to create. So have that thought in the spleen area. Take a deep inhale, and on the exhale, send that thought to the back of your head, to the fontanelle area just behind the crown chakra. Exhale. And in that fontanelle area of your rear of your head, turn that thought into the idea crystallization of that which you want to manifest and materialize. Allow the universe, just leave it to the universe to see what happens. You can open your eyes. That is the answer to your question. Where does thought come in? Where does emotion? That is the organic materialization process. Now, unfortunately, we weren't taught this. The secret government doesn't want you to know this, because imagine people being able to materialize things at will. So I invite you and all your listeners to engage in this process and see what happens.
This explains the phenomenon of cities in India, right? Where you have these realized beings throughout at least recorded history. I'm sure it hasn't been the only continent. It just happens to be maybe the most recent one or the most abundant or prevalent. But I've always been fascinated with the reality that there are human beings that can levitate, materialize, dematerialize,
bingo,
bilocate, manifest trinkets, vibhuti, which I've always been very enamored by. And as I've gone to India and done more research, it's like, to people there, that shit is just normal. It's not. It's not even a big deal,
right?
Especially to those doing it.
Right.
There's a gentleman named Sri M, a realized being that's alive now in India. Very low key. I mean, very not even well known, but he's I guess a Vedic scholar would be the best way to describe him. And I saw a video of him doing an interview, and they were like, "What about the cities and manifesting?" And he was like, basically, he wasn't annoyed, but he's just like, "Yeah, like here's some vibhuti, poof." And just make some vibhuti ash just pour out of his hand. And he's like, yeah, but that's not the point. The reason that realized beings do those type of kind of spiritual parlor tricks, for lack of I don't want to diminish them, but to them, it's really just to get people's attention.
Sure.
And gain devotees and pique their curiosity that there's more to our earthly existence than meets the eye, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and then there are, of course, a bunch of fake gurus that I'm sure throughout history of, sleight of hand and doing real parlor tricks that don't have that ability. But it's so interesting that those that have cultivated that knowledge and ability don't really think much of it, because it's not really the point, right?
Yep.
It's more of a demonstration of that phenomenon.
Yep.
It's not about the phenomenon or the act itself. It's about the purview of reality that allows one's mind and awareness to accept that is in fact a reality.
Correct.
And I guess it's been a growth process for me to let go of the attachment to like that person as a single point of consciousness in that body for that time, as like following them and their teachings and being so enthralled with their ability to do that, when they're the ones saying like, dude, you can do this. You just don't know you can.
Right. But
and that's why you can't.
But man, they hit it right on the head, because we do. Every single person on this planet has the capability and the potentiality to actually do those feats. It's just we weren't taught that. We were taught you got to go to school. You either got to become some type of person in the workforce. Money. It's all about the acquisition of money, et cetera, et cetera. We weren't taught that we had that capability. That's the issue. We're not taught to prepare for death. We're not taught to prepare for the greatest journey that one is going to embark on. That's like saying, hey, Luke, you know what? You're coming here. You and Allison plan to come here to Cuixmala, but you don't book your flight. You don't even know how to get here, let alone you don't even have an itinerary. That is the ludicrousness of not planning for your transition, your consciousness transition, the greatest journey that you're going to have. It's just ridiculous. So
I love it. Like all great things in life. So next thing I want to move into is something you refer to a lot, and we might have just described the phenomenon itself, but you talk about morphogenic fields in relation to the Rasha. Is that what we just described, or is that another aspect of this or piece of this puzzle?
So morphogenetic fields, by the way, are erroneously described by many scientists out there that think they understand the morphogenetic field, but they didn't experience the morphogenetic field, okay? How could you teach something if you didn't, one, experience it, or two, you don't have it in your DNA, that level of data storage? That's why I say a lot of people out there are parrots, and they just parrot information that they've been taught or they've researched. Now, morphogenetic fields, what are they? They are the blueprints of, let's just say, everything, every cell, every atom, every organ system, every star, every planet, every galaxy has this thing called the morphogenetic energy field, which holds the blueprint of that physical matter. Okay, so it's the instructions. That is scalar energy. So morphogenetic fields equals scalar fields. So yes, you're completely correct. Just different terminology.
Or in a pre-existing pattern of potentiality, whereas the scalar field in general is just sort of a blank palette of potentiality, whereas it
is information.
Whereas the morphogenic field is a more focused pattern of
information.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I want to get a little bit into this device and experience, because only having had, a day and a half with this thing here, and, knowing that your mission is not to be like a salesman, because oftentimes you interview someone and they're like, all they want to talk about is their supplement or something. I know it's not really your steez, but I'm personally so like curious and obsessed with this thing. And it's not cheap, from what I understand. And so it's not something that, your average consumer is going to be able to throw in their garage or spare bedroom. Who have been the folks most responsive? Like who are the customers that purchase these? Are they practitioners? Alternative healers, et cetera, kind of like since you've perfected at least this version of the Rasha, how has it infiltrated the world and whose hands is it in and what kind of results or experiences are people having with the 100 some odd units you have out in the
Sure. So first of all, you can't buy the technology on the website. So you just cannot buy it. You cannot go onto the website and purchase it. That's first and foremost. Second, you'll have to, it's usually like 3 degrees of separation in order to get it. So if you don't know me, I'm just not going to sell it to you. Why? It is not a toaster or a biofeedback device or just a machine. It is a live conscious technology. Okay. So it picks its owners, Luke. As crazy as it may sound, it picks its owners. So who are the owners? Private individuals, people that own wellness clinics outside the US, okay? Germany, Japan, Malaysia, Philippines, Spain, et cetera, now Mexico, okay?
Yeah, here at Creeksmala.
Yes, they're the first.
Now I really want to come back here all the time.
Yeah,
I was already sprung on this place. No, I'm like, oh, you have this thing? Jesus.
Yeah. So, yeah, and not that many people have it. I'm only going to make a certain amount in this, I'd say the next 20 years or 30 years. And that's it.
Do you get the sense that there are only a certain number of them needed on Earth in order for them to fulfill its potential?
Correct.
So it's like a law of diminishing returns at a certain point where they're in everyone's home. Like that's not necessary in order to raise the vibration to the place where maybe even it makes itself obsolete someday.
Yeah, so it's really
through our evolution.
We're going to raise the oscillation of the planet, because that's how a lot of people get that wrong too. And it's just how we were taught. It's not, hey man, you have good vibes or high vibes. Really, oscillation is energy expansion, electrical. Magnetism or sound is energy holding. So denser. So things that are higher in vibratory status are denser in physical, okay? If you want to traverse the higher dimensional realms, they are more oscillating. So we are raising the oscillation rate of the planet by having these devices or conscious beings in certain locales on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I have to sit with that for a second. Pardon the pregnant pause here, guys.
Okay.
So, I recently discovered this program. One of my favorite spiritual teachers of all time was a guy named David R. Hawkins. He wrote a book called Power versus Force, right? Yeah. And so I would say he created the scale of consciousness, but he had a model by which to measure consciousness on the earth plane from 1 to 1,000 for those listening that aren't familiar. And then beyond 1,000 would be in the non-physical realm.
Sure.
Ad infinitum, right? To the Godhead. And so been a fan of that work. He used kinesiology or muscle testing to determine the various, I guess where his work really differentiated itself was in that he used kinesiology non-locally. So you could take a concept, a thought, a belief, a continent, a political belief, book, movie, whatever, and rate it on that scale of consciousness versus a chiropractor who does kinesiology and is like, hey, you need more vitamin C, test strong, test weak. So I thought that was really fascinating. I went and saw him speak a couple times in Sedona. I was just reminded of that by my friend. We went and saw his last talk before he transitioned. But anyway, recently, because I'm really big on EMF, I just put out this EMF course to teach people different shielding devices and tactics and just how to strategize your life in your home. Because I'm super sensitive to it, and I think it's the biggest threat to all life on Earth, honestly. Glyphosate and whatnot, maybe a close second because of the soil. But anyway, So I'm always looking for new EMF gadgets, scalar gadgets. I have a thing called the Soma Vedic that uses precious and semi-precious stones to emanate a field in the home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty out there with any kind of EMF mitigation. I found this thing called FLFE,
Mm-hmm.
Focused Life Force Energy. And they adopted the Hawkins model.
Yes.
And they have some kind of device.
I know it.
Okay, you familiar with it? Okay.
I mean, I know of it.
Okay, and
I've not experienced.
They don't like. They asked, does this serve the highest good, to describe exactly what this is? But it involves some sort of technology that's proprietary in the Tesla realm.
Yep.
And they're able to input coordinates
Mm-hmm.
into that, whether it be your cell phone, your home, even your business with your legal business name, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
and raise the level of consciousness of that property due to geopathic stress or EMF or, any kind of trauma that's happened there, burial ground, anything you can think of, right? And they are able to raise it ethically to 570, which is the field of love. And they get a lot of results with EMF.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I think the way I think, I'm like, Hawkins, EMF protection, I'm in. And it's like at a free trial. It's 15 days. Most people keep the trial. And then I think it's like $30 a month. You pay it yearly. But this is one of those things that's like, I think what makes me think of it is, as you're referring to the technology as having its own intelligence or its own agenda,
yes.
and consciousness working through the technology and sort of choosing where it goes.
Yes.
And it reminds me of what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
in that they have something that is material and local,
Mm-hmm.
that's affecting change non-materially, non-locally, in terms of raising the vibration. And it takes a certain type of awareness to kind of buy into something like that.
Sure.
Unless you're me, and then it's easy, because I have pretty good discernment about my bullshit meter is pretty good after 2 decades of being into this kind of stuff. Because I have been duped a few times and learned my lesson. Next time I'm going to vet something better before I recommend it or promote it or even use it. So if your intention is not to sell 1 million of these things and litter the planet with them, how do you kind of tap into where each device is supposed to end up? Like, what's your vetting process? Do you meditate on it? Do you go on the Rasha yourself and get downloads? Like, how do you determine where to focus that energy?
It's all about the intention of whoever it is that contacts me. What's their intention? First question I ask is, what do you plan on doing with the device? What do you plan on doing? Are you service to humanity? Or are you service to self? That's the first question I ask. And what is your intention? And usually that process will steer me to say, because they are literally, let's just say, energetic children, if you will, because they're hand built and they're like part of my family. So, it's to say you had children, you want to make sure your children, make the right choice. Where do you want to end up? Who do you want to be with? What do you want to do? It is that type of relationship, as crazy as it may sound, and that's really the process. If there is one, it's all about the person's intention. So, for example, if someone says, I plan on utilizing the Rasha to open up a slew of wellness clinics, and, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but are they actually going to be helping, let's just say, setting up a foundation and helping the poor? What are they doing? Like, what is their clinics doing? You could have the richest people on the planet, but if they're not servicing humanity, they're not taking time out of their busy schedule, whether it's a few days or a week, to actually go on, we call them medical missions or alternative medical missions or humanitarian missions, the Rasha won't end up there.
Interesting.
And let's just say everything is also intention and also in the language. If you come across technologies that are talking about raising the vibration, right there, that's a red flag. I don't care how much they think they understand Hawkins' work. That's not by coincidence. They're talking about higher vibration when we're talking about higher oscillation, and that's always been the case.
What would the terminology energy field or frequency?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be in alignment with
Yeah, I mean, that's
oscillation?
of course, because our goal is to raise the oscillation of frequency.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If consciousness expansion is your thing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, here's the thing. I think when I find out about different technologies, I'm always, thinking, all right, what's wrong with me physically? I'm like, I got this back pain. My eyes are kind of weird. I have this tinnitus.
Sure.
I have at any given time 3 things that are pesky, and I just haven't been able to completely crack the code on.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, when you dig deeper into that, I think one can find, your goal is not to get rid of your back pain. Your goal is to feel good in your body and express your life to its highest potential, right? And so not having back pain is just a side effect of a higher consciousness.
There you go.
Right?
You got it.
So I think we get caught up on the myopic view of like, I want to fix this and that. Whereas if I know this from going to Joe Dispenza retreats, man. It's like, you don't go there to fix your back or MS or whatever's going on. You go there to meditate for freaking 5 hours, and then poof, spontaneously people are
Healing.
like, wow, no more wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's because the oscillation, I guess, you would say, has
Joe
been,
gets it. He absolutely, he's one of the few people out there that actually literally understand, consciousness and healing as a byproduct.
Right.
Spontaneous healing, absolutely doable, achievable.
Yeah.
When you increase your awareness and your consciousness.
Right. I guess that's that believing is seen, right?
Yeah.
I love Wayne Dyer's simple way of putting it. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? So rather than focusing on this pain in my back or sensitivity to EMF or whatever it happens to be that's plaguing me, it's like just keep the eye on the prize, which is raising of one's consciousness.
You got it, man.
Right?
You got it.
And then eventually those things start to fall away.
Yeah. Can you imagine raising your consciousness just like those masters, right? And then being able to materialize things at will? Healing's a byproduct.
Right.
That's nothing.
That's the funny thing, going back to those, the mystics and avatars of India, and specifically, it's like, these guys are just eating rice and dal every day, if that. Maybe they don't even eat. Many of them are reported to rarely, if ever, sleep. And I'm thinking, they're not doing the biohacks. They're not on a paleo, high-fat diet. They're not vegan. They don't give a shit about any of that.
No.
The micro decisions that I think myself and so many of us get caught up in, they're just like ascension, number one goal.
Right.
Go up.
Right.
You know what I mean? And keep going until you're not in a body anymore.
Well, that's the whole, right there, another gem of wisdom that you just shared with your viewers. When you make your ultimate, let's say, intention or desire, but let's use intention, at one mint with Source or God, everything else falls into line. When that is your ultimate intention, that oneness or at one mint with Source, all your other relationships pale in comparison and will literally evolve as they should.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about my recovery journey through addiction is the rude awakening that when I popped out of rehab at 26 years old, thinking that I'm sober, all my problems are going to be over, because it seemed on the surface level that all of my problems in relationships and mental health issues and all the things, legal problems to say the least, being unemployable, that now that I'm physically free of those substances, that I'm going to be happy and be a great guy. And I had a very rude awakening to find that it wasn't about the physical sobriety. And that's not even the purpose of the model of the 12 steps. And when you were talking about the number 12, I was like, oh, that's interesting. The 12 steps have been, in our lifetime, the most effective and wholesale way that people have been freed from addictions, right? And I'm sure it happens in ways like you have, but they're exceedingly rare compared to the masses who go to some meetings and get their shit together. But the thing there is, I've realized over the years is, this is speaking just specifically with recovery, but it ties into that area that we were just covering, is it's not about even getting sober, being free of the addiction, because when you do that, like they say, you take a drunk horse thief and you get him sober, what do you have? A sober horse thief.
Right.
You're still at the same consciousness. Right. So it's like you get sober And you think you're going to go to these meetings and go to rehab to get physically sober. And then what happens is you actually go there to learn how to have a relationship with God. And it's the relationship with God that removes the need for the anesthesia. Because what you were craving for and longing for was that connection with oneness, your higher self, love, all of those things that make life not only tolerable and livable, but worthwhile and give it purpose.
Value, right?
Yeah. So it's, I always just find that so funny that, including myself, so many people get caught up on all these gimmicks and gadgets when the end goal is really oneness. And so what if we just skip all the steps along the way in a sense and just like, as you said, just aim for the highest intention and watch those other pathologies or habits or dysfunctional ways of thinking, feeling, being evaporate because you no longer oscillate at the level of that habit, whatever it is. Yeah. So on that note, and I know it's, it's sensitive with people that make technologies and different things like that have positive effects on people's health because of the legalities involved. And, I know there's certain touch words that we all must avoid in order to not make medical claims and things like that. But I was looking on your Instagram, just doing some research, and it's, it's like Rasha doesn't say cures or treats, of course, but it says, helping people heal from, autism, Lyme disease, these pretty seemingly unsurmountable physical challenges that people are having. So in your paradigm of work with the Rasha and helping to raise one's frequency or consciousness, what sort of things have you seen people be able to accomplish within their own capacity for healing?
Right. So, and the Rasha, all it does is it communicates to the DNA and it helps the person reclaim their natural ability to heal themselves. That's all it does, okay? And it does it through relaxing the body, right? Stress relief, relaxation. So if you subscribe to the fact that stress equals inflammation, inflammation equals disease and other pathologies, and you're reducing stress, you can make your own conclusions. Now, things as autism, Alzheimer's, type 2 or 1 diabetes, they're all certain conditions, right? So all we're doing is we're relaxing those people. And for some reason, consciousness becomes the foundation of healing. When you allow consciousness to do its thing, amazing things happen in the body. So all those labels of pathologies, those are just conditions, right, of consciousness.
Right. And that explains, I guess, going back to the Joe Dispenza thing or different, profound plant medicine experiences people have had where they're having something that's manifesting physically. They bypass that whole, healing paradigm or cure treatment paradigm and just go to consciousness and go to source, pop out of that experience and the physical thing's gone. It was really, truly a symptom of unhealed emotional trauma, this kind of stuff. So that being said, some of the things that that you talk about in your Instagram, for example, and I know I'm always like dancing around this to find a way to say it, and you're probably well versed at doing this without making false claims and whatnot. But I met someone at Robert Slovak's party in San Diego where we were both present and whatever, missed each other, and then it was last call, we were both gone. But I met a woman there. And I said, oh man, I can't wait to try the Rasha and meet Jerry. We're going to be going to Mexico, et cetera. And she was like, oh man, she goes, I've seen kids with that are non-communicative level autism, just, bouncing off the walls, just completely not there. Have one session and then become verbal or walk around and be calm, like just straight up miracle moments for people. What kind of things have you seen subjectively that have really gotten your attention? Are there any key moments where you were like, holy shit, nature consciousness is so powerful because it just allowed this person to do this for themselves?
Each one of those cases are astounding to me and amazing, right? So it doesn't matter if it's autism or Alzheimer's or, cardiovascular. I've seen consciousness shift. And when you shift the consciousness, or let's just say we allow the children to regain access to their higher dimensional conscious identity. When that comes online, consciousness is an amazing thing, as you know, and let's just say spontaneous conditions will emerge and will reprogram those prior conditions.
Wow. Epic, dude.
So
for people now listening, which is the case, I'm sure, so much of the time as I meet fascinating people like you that are creating amazing technologies, modalities, etc., the first question is, okay, I want to try this. I'm in. I want to experience this. How would one find a practitioner or clinic or something like that, since this isn't really, like a B2C commercial device that anyone can just roll out and buy and, like I said, throw it in their spare room or something? Like, if somebody really wants to experience this, would they go to your site?
Yeah, go to the website. They can just email us, and depending on their location or where they live geographically, we'll steer them to that direction.
And how many approximately are in the United States, for example?
Not many.
Not many?
Yeah.
More overseas?
Yeah, most of it, the bulk is, I'd say 90% is
well, that's
overseas.
Kind of cool, because a lot of times our European and multinational friends write in the show like, I can't find the thing you talk about the show because I'm not in the United States. So this would be the inverse of that.
This would be the inverse of that, right?
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Are there any states that come to mind where states or cities in the U.S., since most of our listeners are here, where one could find access to one of these in a public way?
There is a doctor in New Orleans, Louisiana, Dr. Mignon Mary. There is a wellness resort in Miami called, I think it's called the Carillon. They're on our website.
Okay, cool.
Just go to our website.
So they can go there and search and see. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Awesome, man. Well, I hope to God someone has one near Los Angeles, at least while I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm going to pack in as many as I can here. Oh, the last thing I thought was interesting that you said, and then we can wrap it up, was I think when I was about to take my first journey, which really was a journey, now that I think about it, you said, yeah, Luke, this isn't the kind of thing like you need to have in your house and do all the time. You're like, you might do 3 or 4 sessions and then like you're good for your life, or it might be something you return to on an annual basis.
Correct.
Do a couple sessions. It's not like something that you become dependent on. And I'm getting that's because, as you're saying, all this is doing is really just giving you an access point to these energies that are already present. That
Right.
we just kind of, through conscious or unconscious amnesia, forgotten how to harness.
Right. So the technology was designed not to have a addiction to it or to be dependent upon it. Everyone's living a different life, different emotions, different relationships. Everyone is on their different path. So the Rasha is only going to enhance that person or that consciousness to a level where it's no longer needed. And the reason why people say, well, why did you create it then? Yeah, to actually, redo the effects of what happened when I had that transfer of consciousness experience. It's not by coincidence we're bombarded by EMF 5G and other epigenetic factors that influence and block our consciousness. The Rasha is here to assist. That is it. Once you've gotten what you need as an upgrade, if you will, I call it like a software upgrade, you're done. You're good.
Wow. Good shit, man.
Yeah.
Well, my last question for you, my friend, and I'm sure over the next few days here at Queeksmala, I'll be asking you the ones that like, I should have recorded this. But this one I ask every guest that comes on the show.
Mm-hmm.
You've taught me so much today. Our listeners, I'm sure, are blown away and have learned so much and really expanded their awareness about these topics. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that you might recommend they go study?
Woo. Well, Nikola Tesla, if you haven't looked at his work, that's one of them. Definitely, I would say Antoine Priori, another one, because these are all in the realms of energy and energy healing. And I would say the third one would probably be yourself.
Damn.
Write your own book, write your own essay,
that.
write your own poetry, write your own experience, and then read it because you are the best teacher. So.
Damn, bro, that's good. Out of about 310 interviews on this show, no one's ever said that.
Oh.
I'm thinking, why not? That's so obvious. Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Well, thank you for spending time with us today.
Right.
Give us your website, social media, any of that. We'll put it in the show notes so people can look you up.
So now or later?
Right now.
Oh, just the THE, Rasha, RASHA.com.
Cool. TheRasha.com.
Yeah. And then you'll get all our
Sweet
information.
Thanks, dude. Well, thanks again for being here. It's so fortuitous.
Thanks for having me. And really, thank you for being brave enough to have me on, because really no one does, but it's fine. Let's thank the Cuixmala Resort for actually hosting this.
Man.
And I'm excited for them to have the Rasha. So,
This is the perfect place. The energy here is so high. Well, I want to say high vibe. The energy here is oscillating at a really high frequency.
You got it.
It really is. The moment I pulled on this property last year, I was just like, oh yeah, this is the seat of the soul here. I was just, even last night, just watching how, when you're near the equator, just the energy, or nearer than I'm used to living, it's just the amount of life force. It's just, there's every square foot, there's 20 bugs, and then the geckos eating those bugs.
Right. And the plants are like beautifully ginormous.
It's just like, oh my God, the life force is just like, it's just teeming with life. Everywhere you look, something's alive and being birthed and then changing on and being devoured and recycled. And it's incredible place to be.
Oh, I wanted to just thank Gofredo and Alix and Michaela for putting this all together.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
otherwise, we wouldn't even be here, right?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Thank you.
I don't have this kind of budget. You kidding me?
Yes. So
it's been really cool to come here twice. And last time I did one interview with Alix, the owner, and then this time, of course, you and Robert Slovak and Dr. Buttar. Yeah, and so these are like three people. I interviewed Buttar already, but I've been wanting to interview you and Robert Slovak. So when I got the invite to come do this initially as the retreat, and now, going to be the retreat in January, I was like, what? How is this even possible? To get to do these in person in such a beautiful environment. It's just like, wow. I woke up this morning just so grateful. I was saying my prayers with my lady and just going, God, like, how did I get from where I came from? I'm just in such a sad, desperate place in, the first half of my life to be where I am now. Some of it's hard work. Most of it's grace.
Yeah.
And just being receptive to the call.
Yep.
Keeping an open heart and an open mind. And it's just, God never ceases to amaze me, honestly. Just as you said, the more I move toward that and move into service, it's just everything's taken care of.
And we'll be back down here at the end of January for
January
the Cuixmala retreat.
2021.
So hopefully everyone can come join us.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's cool for us to be here, but when there's a crowd of like-minded people that really want to get immersed in this experience, it's going to be insane.
Yeah, that will be insane.
Yeah, I would love to work on the Rasha team just to watch people's faces when they pop out of their first journey. That's what was really fun for me, is watching Allison. And even while she was on it, she was talking and laughing, and she was having her just whole trip.
Right.
And she came out and she was like, so I just met an alien and da-da-da, just like it was nothing. It's like, wow, this must be a really fun team to work on, where you just watch people just bust open.
Your open invitation anytime you want to come up and you want to, you can just be that fly in the wall with a camera and be like, and it's all in flow. And
very cool, man. All right, dude. Well, thanks for joining me, everyone listening. Thank you for joining us. And with that, I bid you farewell.